Hi, I'm Dennis Vanderginst. Join me in a series of entertaining and interesting conversations with entertaining and interesting people. We'll explore various aspects of the human experience and what makes life more fun. This is Uncommon Convos. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Dennis Vanderginst, here with my sidekick, charming and goofy, Dana Watkins. We have a great guest today. I'd like you to all meet Bo Davidson, one of the most talented guys that you may have never heard of, and hopefully that's going to change. He's a two-time regional Emmy-nominated recording artist, an actor, songwriter, on-air TV host. He's co-starred on The Gilmore Girls, Days of Our Lives, The Bold and the Beautiful. He starred opposite Tatum O'Neal in Runaway Romance and in the Hallmark movie The Ultimate Legacy with Raquel Welch, one of my personal favorites. Brian Dennehy and Lee Merriweather. He's performed as one of the singers on The Singing Bee. He was named one of Cosmopolitan magazine's hottest bachelors of 2009. Wow. One of Nashville's 25 most beautiful people. And he has received the 10 Outstanding Young Americans Award in 2013. Bo recently co-hosted Tegna and Sony's nationally syndicated daytime TV talk show Daily Blast Live. He's a graduate of Northwestern University in Chicago, where he majored in vocal performance, opera, and political science, a very interesting combination that I want to talk about. I first met Bo about 10 or 12 years ago when he won a songwriting contest that I had sponsored on behalf of a fundraising effort. I've been fortunate to call him my friend ever since then, and maybe we'll talk about some of the good old days, but I really want to concentrate on now and the future. So let's get started. Bo, first of all, thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Dennis. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really glad that you're doing this podcast series. I think there's a lot to be said, and how admirable it is that you're trying to focus on that which binds us and that which moves us forward. I think you and I have been guys that, although coming from maybe dissimilar backgrounds, different perspectives, hopefully you and I, through friendship and through professional acquaintances and through the spirit of music, have found a unique bond over the years. And here we are. What was it? 2010 was the Spirit Pageant, I think.
I think so, something like that.
We're almost 11 years after that, and still talking and still kicking. So thank you for having me and including me in this. And it's been great to be your friend and even a colleague of some sort.
Absolutely. And I referenced you as being one of the most talented guys that a lot of people have no familiarity with, and that raises an issue. I mean, to paraphrase that commercial from the 80s and 90s, Bo knows music. Bo knows acting. Bo knows performing. Why don't more people know Bo?
It's a great question, because obviously I've got the marketing, don't I? I mean,
well,
it's already there. Here, I'll start out by saying this, Dennis. You know this as well as I do, but a lot of people at home might not know this. The entertainment business is not a meritocracy. Now, that's not to say that people at the top are not good, that they're not talented. Obviously, when I watch certain performances, whether it's musical or acting or otherwise, there are people at the top of their games that are phenomenal, but there's a certain amount of luck and opportunity that comes into play, that no matter how gifted you are, there's a lot of gifted people out there, Dennis, that we will never hear of for whatever reason. There's kind of a stars aligning that kind of has to happen for you to be in a particular place at a particular moment in time. For me, musically, I can speak to this because I spent 10 years in Nashville. I came along to Nashville at a time when Carrie Underwood and Keith Urban were getting very big, and the music changed. It went from, I'd say, a vocally dominant kind of sound, especially for men, to what you might call bro country. Luke Bryan, Jason Aldean. Not to disparage their voices, but just to say that the movement changed. And unless you adapt to that, or your producers help you adapt to that, you might get looked over. You look at a guy like Vince Gill, who I admire as a vocalist. Vince Gill, I don't think, makes it today. It's a shame, but it's true. So I just tell people at home, for one thing, I want to make it clear, I'm not out for fame. That's not why I do it. If you don't hear of me because I'm not a famous name to you, that doesn't bother me. I'd rather you hear my music or see a performance and say, I don't know who it is, but I love it. That's really what I'm more concerned with. So, so many people are look, we live in an era, Dennis, where everyone is an influencer, quote unquote. That means you have to have X amount of followers, and that you don't mean anything unless you have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. And, I don't live by that motto. That's not why I'm here. It's not what I'm about. If my music reaches millions and millions of people, that's wonderful. And I really hope that it does. But I just try to, make it said at the outset that I don't want to be the guy that gets hassled when he goes out to eat just because I'm famous. That's not why I want that, People say they do it for the craft, and they should. But, all too often, celebrity gets in the way of that.
I recall it was several years ago, but you and I had a conversation. I don't know if you'll remember this, and I don't know if this is still true, but I believe you told me that at that point you made a concerted effort not to engage a talent agency or a manager to guide your career. Is that still the case? You haven't hooked up with an agency?
No. Since that time, I certainly have, and with a number of different types. And as you know, a lot of actors and singers go through multiple different agents and managers. I will say this, and I say this because I just had this discussion with an entertainment attorney yesterday who's representing me on something. And I think it maybe is the highest compliment I've been paid, which is he said, Bo applies the motto that too much work is never enough. And I've tried to outwork my opponent. I'm like a Peyton Manning reference. Peyton always said, I don't think I've got the greatest arm. There's people out there that are more gifted than me athletically, but I could outwork you. I'll out-prepare you. And so for me, I used a marketing mindset. And this attorney referenced Garth Brooks as an example, saying he didn't think Garth Brooks had the greatest voice, but he was the best self-marketer in town. So I've never wanted my marketing or my PR skills to mask or to make excuses for a lack of talent. But I will say that it's sad, but there are few people out there who will fight for you as hard as you.
True. Very true.
And that's why I've had to apply that level of marketing to my talent, because I hate to say this, Dennis, I've had agents before who just don't work hard enough. They don't pitch you when you need pitching. They're not sending you out for the right roles. They're not putting you in front of the right record labels. They're not even putting the right songs. And this happened recently. I saw one of my reels, which is a television reel of your compilation of your best hits, basically, sent to a particular television show, and they sent the wrong reel. And they said, hey, what do you think about this guy? And I thought, you can't send that reel to that broadcaster. They're gonna think you're an idiot, because it's not the right reel. You don't send... if you're Chris Cuomo, you don't send the best of Chris Cuomo to Entertainment Tonight. They're not compatible. That's not what Entertainment Tonight does. You see what I'm saying? So I've seen this happen often, and I end up having to clean up someone else's mistakes.
Right. No, I get that, and I certainly understand and appreciate what you obviously have had to struggle with over the years. Anybody, I believe, in the entertainment industry has probably had similar complaints of their representatives and I guess the business in general. And I want to ask questions. This is kind of how I do depositions and take testimony, doing cross-examination. I like to kind of jump around, keep it as lively as possible. Usually when I'm doing it with a defendant or a witness, it's because I want to keep them off guard, but that's not the case with you. That's not what we're doing. Yeah, that's not what we're doing.
Make you cry.
Yeah, I make her cry, but I won't make you cry. I do want, however, it's something that you and I have discussed off the air. I want to revisit 2020, even though I just said I want to talk about now and the future. Now and the future has certainly been impacted by the last year and the craziness and chaos that ensued. And I know a lot of people have been through the ringer. But I know that you in particular have had some horrible events happen in 2020. And I'd like you, to the extent you're comfortable, to discuss that and discuss how you've gotten through, because you're doing great. And you've been through so much. I think it would be very helpful to our audience to see what it takes when you've been faced with such adversity to be triumphant on the other end of things.
Oh boy. Well, there was a string of about 18 months that were very difficult for me, and it actually started in 2019. There are career opportunities that you take because you believe they're the best things for you. You believe it's like, sometimes opportunities only come around once, and you better be ready to, you know, move forward. And I did. I did that with a television show. I've done that with television shows in the past that I thought were in my best interest, and it didn't work out. It didn't work out like I wanted it to work out. It was different from what I thought it would be. And as someone who, you take what you're given at the time saying, look how great this is, and look at the money you make, and look at the opportunity, and you run with it. And actors do this actually too. They take the wrong project and it sidelines them for however many years because they picked the wrong movie. Maybe it flopped, So there were career things that happened with me that did not work out that I thought would. And that started a kind of a downward spiral, really, that I couldn't have anticipated. I was in a relationship at the time, a serious one, that also did not work out for a number of different reasons. And, I look back on it with happiness, of course. There are things, any relationship that you take the positives out of, you must become. I'll tell you what, I'm a better man, I'm a better boyfriend, I'm a better fiance, I'm a better all of that because of that relationship. The same thing also is true of the career things that didn't work out. I'm a better debater, I'm a better conversationalist, I'm a better in your deposition chair. And then in 2020, look, but again, a lot of people have experienced these things, furloughs, loss. In 2020, September of 2020, I came back to Memphis, Tennessee, which is where I am now, where I'm from, to spend some time with my folks. I thought it was important. COVID had hit. We weren't really sure what was going to happen. It was a time of uncertainty for a lot of people. I took a trip over to Arkansas to fish with my dad, which he's been doing for, 40, 50 years, maybe longer. And for me, at least 20, if not more. We've made that trip many, many times. And we thought, if there's any time to do it, it's now. And I didn't really know, coming back to Memphis, a place I don't really like. There's nothing here for me. But I thought I should really see my folks. I should spend time with them because you never know. If they get COVID and they're gone, you're sure not going to see them die because they're going to be in a hospital
Right.
somewhere. You'll never see them. And coming back in September 13th on a beautiful Sunday, not unlike what I see outside my window today, we were hitting a head-on collision. And I don't remember any of it. And I obviously was unconscious. A driver who should not have ever gotten in the car that day came across at about 80 miles an hour, we think, and hit us head on. We were going maybe 60, 70, I'm not sure, whatever the speed limit was. We never saw it, and I never saw it. I was looking down at the time, and it killed the driver and my father who was driving the truck instantly. And I woke up in the ER, and I was going in for a CT scan. And I'm the only survivor of that accident. I've listened to the 911 calls. It's harrowing. It's like a PTSD kind of a thing, even though I don't remember it. You're kind of putting pieces together of it. And so I lost my father, had to bury my father, having nothing to do with COVID. Who would have ever thought that would have happened? But this is the silver lining. Through loss of career opportunities, through loss of a relationship, through loss of a parent, there is grace to be found. There are blessings that are bestowed in spite of it. I'm a man of faith, and I believe that there are things that happen. Everyone says everything happens for a reason. Well, maybe, but you might get to choose the reason too. You might be able to steer that path. And for me, having all that time when I came back to Memphis starting in May with my father, it was critical. There was a restoration, a reconciliation that happened between him and me that I didn't think was even possible. So the time I was meant to be here. I believe that. I would have hated it if he had died and I hadn't had that time. So again, I tell you, I'm better in my career as a result of past problems and unfortunate circumstances. I'm better in my relationships because I have loved and loved hard, and I'm better in terms of hopefully my compassion and my understanding of what people are going through, having lost a parent.
Yeah. Well, I shared with you my sympathies and prayers when it happened, but I want to reiterate that now. Obviously, I've lost both my parents, but I at least had some sense of the fact that it was going to be occurring. My dad had a heart attack, and my mom, unfortunately, died from lung cancer, and that was horrible. But when you have absolutely no sense and it makes no sense that somebody in that condition got behind the wheel of a car, it's so devastating. So my heart goes out to you.
This too. and I didn't think about this till afterwards, but I was with my father at the moment of his death. He always said he wanted to go quickly. He saw his father die of colon cancer, like the situation with your mom. And these are not pleasant deaths. These are not pleasant, he didn't want to go down that way. And I'm glad for him. I'm happy for heaven's gain and sad for my loss, but at the same time, he went quickly. It's exactly how he would have wanted to go. And he was 71 years old. Not too young, not too old, but he lived the life he wanted to live. And he mended all the fences he wanted to mend, which I think is important. Not a lot of people can say, let's specifically talk about 2020, that got to be at their parents' side the moment they died.
True, very true.
And I think about that, I'm like, I was with him. Not a lot of people get that opportunity. So as sad as I am that it happened, I was there.
And you mentioned that, in a sense and in a way that was a blessing, and you mentioned your faith. It's kind of a good segue into something that I wanted to discuss and exhibit some of your talent in after fashion. You composed and performed what I think is a masterpiece, "Blessed."
Oh, thank you.
And I know that the military, and I want you to talk a little bit before we have an opportunity to play that. I want you to talk a little bit about how this came about, how it was that or why it was, I guess, that you even thought to put together a song reflecting on our military, and how you were able to put together the video that accompanied the music, and then I want to play that for our audience.
Okay, sure. I'll be as succinct as I possibly can be and not long-winded. I think it was around 2011, 2012. I had been touring with a group that performs for Amway Global, all their huge conventions that they have. They're a very energetic group, and they are a very patriotic group too. So our director at the time said, would anyone like to take a stab at writing some original material for the next album? And I did. And I was a songwriter and a singer in Nashville, and I really wanted to, and I was working with some incredible people at the time, and I thought I should really give this a go. And the idea that spawned this wasn't just, hey, write something for this project. I was experiencing at the time, I'm very high on the millennial end because of my age. I'm not 40 yet, but I'm close. And I was thinking about my generation, and I thought about my dad's generation and my grandfather's generation, both who served. My dad was in the reserves, but my grandfather fought in the Philippines. And I thought about, these stories of courage and duty and honor in these words, are we experiencing them still, or are they just kind of like a tall tale? Or do we even know what they are anymore? What's courage anymore? Of course, courage is the man who steps out in front of the child that protects him from the bus hitting him. We know that. We know firefighters do it every day. Policemen do it every day. Our military does it. But is there everyday heroism? Is there everyday courage and honor that we can see? And my answer was yes. But I had to start the song from the premise asking the question, what is courage? What is honor? Are these words or just ideals long forgotten? And, freedom is obviously just one generation away from extinction, as has been said. And so I believe the torch must be passed. If you're not inculcating other people and passing that down, then we may lose it. We may lose certain basic precepts and basic ideals. So I wrote the song. I sent it to the guy who was the leader of the band at the time. He loved it. He said, let's produce it. So we did. And then I got the idea to do this music video. I had a buddy in Nashville at the time who'd done some music videos, and he said, I really like the song, let's do something. And on a shoestring budget, I started conceptualizing. I thought, how do we do this? And so I contacted the Air National Guard, which was in Nashville, and I said, could we use your planes or your hangar? And I thought they're going to just say, get out of here, get lost. Right. They said, let me see what I can do. And it took Dennis about 3 to 4 months of approval that went all the way up to the Pentagon, Department of Defense. You can't have tail numbers on the planes. You can't have officers' names. There's a bunch of stuff you have to clear. But they said, sure. I was blown away. They offered all of their current staff at the time, their personnel. They offered everything. When our director said, can he hop up on the wing of the C-130? They said, sure, why not? Wow. One of those happenstance things that's just incredible when this synergy comes together. And they didn't even really know what it probably was or how, I'm sure the military was probably thinking, well, we need to make sure he's not making fun of us or doing something tongue-in-cheek that's not great, and it had to go through an approval process even in the end, and ended up just working out so beautifully. So that was really the spirit, that the reason for the composition, the reason for the music video, which again I hope reaches people. I hope it touches people. I think that once again we're living in a very hedonistic, self-centered time where I hope that our children and our grandchildren learn to understand what these concepts I speak of mean.
Wonderful. Now, with that segue, I want to go ahead and play the song, and then we're going to come back and discuss a little bit more.
What is courage? What is honor? All these words are just ideals long forgotten. What is duty? What is glory? Are they just written down in some old story?
My fondest memory of World War II was the day when victory was declared over the Axis.
A good American cannot live without freedom. It's worth fighting for.
When we hear a word like freedom, do we know what it really means? Or do we take it all for granted, living like kings and queens? We are blessed to live in freedom, blessed to live in peace, blessed with food and shelter, blessed with life on lease, blessed to gather freely, blessed to have a voice, blessed that someone brave fought so we could have a choice. We are blessed. Oh, we are blessed.
We have the opportunity here in the United States of America to be what we want to be.
I've been several countries all over the world, and there's nowhere in the world like it is here in this country.
Is faith a notion or fear of hell? Or have we lost our very faith in faith itself? Is it our rock or is it madness? Or do we cling to it like rain in times of sadness?
Freedom is not just a concept, I think it's a way to live, and it's something we can give.
It's always been a family tradition in my family, and just to be a representative of the best country the world has ever known is my true blessing.
We've got guys who served in Pennsylvania, New York, Kentucky, Tennessee, and they come together and become one of the greatest fighting forces that's ever existed. And you wouldn't have had those friends, but they will lay down their life for you.
It is easy to remember, but easy to forget the beauty of our country and the simple gifts we get. 'Cause we are blessed to live in freedom, blessed to live in peace, blessed with food and shelter, blessed with life on lease, blessed to gather freely, blessed to have a voice, blessed that someone brave fought so we could have a choice. We are blessed. Oh, we are blessed to live in freedom, blessed with food and shelter, blessed with a life on lease, blessed to gather.
Blessing.
Unique.
An example.
Happiness.
I'm honored.
Sacrifice.
Most blessed.
And blessed that someone brave thought so we could have a choice. We are blessed. Oh, we are blessed. Oh,
So as I said, the first time I saw that video and heard the music, I was extremely moved, and every time I hear it, I feel the same way. And I recall it wouldn't have been the first time I saw it, but I recall seeing it played on some program. I think it would have been around the 4th of July or Memorial Day.
CMT. I think its premiere was on CMT.
That might have been it. And it, to me, obviously seems like the perfect song to be played every Independence Day or every Memorial Day, and year-round for that matter. But, one of the things that strikes me about the video, and I think you've done a couple versions of that, if I'm correct, but the one that we just played is the one that has the interviews throughout the video. So who were these folks that were interviewed? How'd that all get lined up?
Again, another just serendipity that just fell into place so nicely. When I asked the Air National Guard whether I could use their facilities, I said, do you have any veterans I could get on camera? And they said, we'll try to find some. And I said, just young and old, as wide of a range as you can give us. We did not pre-interview these guys. We had no idea what we were even going to find when we showed up. So we just set up the scene. We had everyone from World War II, 95-year-old gentlemen, all the way down to Enduring Freedom, which was, of course, the most recent war at the time. So that's Afghanistan and Iraq. There was a couple Desert Storm veterans. There were 2 Vietnam, and as we all know, Vietnam is still a very hot button topic. It's a very hot, it's a hot button issue for so many people about how they feel about that war. And sure. I understand it. But for the veterans, they don't deserve the brunt of that ire. And so we had all these different, I think it was 7 total that we had. And I just kind of wanted to be very conversational about it, as I am with you right now, and said, what was your fondest memory of World War II? And he said the day victory was declared over the Axis. And maybe the most poignant one I thought was when I said, what does freedom mean to you? And that's a very loaded question. And he said, freedom, I think, isn't just a concept, it's something we can give. And that's interesting, the transformative power of freedom, which the U.S., for all of our faults and flaws, and we know there are many, we have liberated and given freedom as a concept and as an idea, as a spark, back to the American Revolution even, to so many people around the world. And that's why so many people want to come here today. Right. It's because of that freedom of this basic, the fact that you and I can have a controversial conversation right now and not have the government jump on us about it is incredible. There are people around the world who can't do that. So, when he talked about freedom as a transformative vehicle, I thought that's just profound. So these guys, I had no idea, Dennis, what they were going to say. I thought they may freeze, who knows what's going to come out of their mouths. And it ended up being just beautiful.
Well, I agree. It definitely came out. You couldn't have written the script any better.
And it wasn't scripted. That's the best part about it.
Exactly. I think that was great. Now, would you say that Blessed is your favorite composition, or are there other songs that you have written that you prefer?
The conventional wisdom in this business is write what you know, and so Blessed was something I knew that it was in my heart to write it. You should always pursue what you're passionate about. I think I've written a lot of love songs that I think I know well, not because that means I'm a great lover. It means that maybe love lost. I know that well too. And I've written, and of course, the song that I did for the Independent Spirit Pageant was one that we modified coming from a love song into this kind of princess pageantry sort of motif. So I felt like, writing music that I knew and about people that I knew was important. More Than I Can Give, for instance, was like kind of the song that put me on the map with a lot of people because MTV, CMT, all these people ingested it, and it was like unprecedented at the time for some indie artist to get on these platforms back when they were really a thing. And it was written about my cousin and his relationship with his girlfriend at the time. He's saying, she's wanting more than I can possibly give her. I'm giving her everything. And so I put that down into lyrics. And by the way, for anyone that listens to SiriusXM, the Billy Joel channel is phenomenal because he will talk about each composition and why he wrote it. And you think it's about one thing and then it's about something totally
Completely different.
completely
Yeah.
different. Yeah, and which is kind of amazing in a way. And I love listening to songwriters' stories. I think that's why I love the craft so much. So, do I think Blessed is the best? I mean, maybe. I don't know. Is it my favorite? It's one of my favorites for sure.
For sure.
Lee Greenwood, God Bless the USA. He wrote one song, and of course he's written many, but that was his signature song.
Right.
You can't call him a one-hit wonder necessarily because he has written other things. I'm just not that. Most people are not familiar with it.
Right.
When you write that one that just hits you right here, you run with it.
Right. Speaking of writing songs, for the audience, I dabbled a little bit, and I wrote a song, and Bo recorded it, and it was absolutely beautiful.
I remember
and it turned out so great. And unfortunately, dumb me, I had it housed in one location, and my computer crashed. And we've never been able to retrieve it. And I think I reached out to you after that, and you didn't have a copy of it either, or you couldn't locate it. Yeah, well, we're going to have to.
Again.
We will have to do it again because I actually loved that version. It was beautiful. But by the way, Dana, you can chime in any time you like. I don't want
Here's
to.
what Dana thinks.
I know.
I don't want to interrupt anybody.
No, I don't want to like keep you out of the conversation here. I feel like we're taking.
Dana, do you have a
complete
goofy
control.
question since Dennis described you as goofy? Is there anything?
I have many goofy questions. As a matter of fact, if I wasn't worried about interrupting you or taking all day, as you were talking, this is kind of what my brain does. You mentioned doing that video on a shoestring budget. And
Yeah.
I think, wow, that's such a weird thing to say. I mean, obviously we say it a lot, but now I wonder where that came from.
the what shoestring budget? The word?
Yeah. Just in
I
general.
told you.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
She'll Google it after
I
this,
will,
and
I will.
she'll have an answer for us. Well, you don't need to go there though.
No, definitely not. That's
I do because since you brought up the issue of production, how is it? Kind of walk us through your process of composition. Do you think of the music first or the lyrics? And how does that come together? And then how does it get produced? Do you have a studio in the house that you monkey with things and then take it elsewhere, or what's that process?
Everything is so DIY nowadays because equipment has gotten cheaper, production's gotten cheaper. It's you used to have to pay an exorbitant amount to get it done, and you don't have to do that anymore. But I want to come back to that element of it and just tell you what the process is first, which is sometimes Billy, for instance, and again I admire him so much. Billy Joel, that is, he takes motifs. He pretty much describes himself as kind of a counterfeit artist. He listens to people that he likes and he brings those elements into his pieces. So I kind of do the same. I listen to things that I like and try to bring them in and hope I'm not plagiarizing.
Sure, right?
But sometimes the music comes first. Sometimes there's a motif, a melody that comes along to you. And melody is so important. And by the way, I mentioned this to a friend the other day, and I want to bring it up to you. And actually, Danny could even jump in here too. It's my opinion that men listen more to beats and music, and women listen more to the lyrics of a song. There's a fundamental difference psychologically between how men and women process music. It's kind of an algorithmic thing that's happening in your brain, and that's why women know lyrics so incredibly well, whereas men can probably identify more by the beat or the melody of the tune. Interesting. So that's why when you're a lyricist, you have to make sure, for instance, if your target audience is women, you better have something very profound to say that sticks. Now, club music, both people I feel like are processing it the same way. It's about the beat, it's how you dance. But in terms of some of the greatest compositions of our time, I believe came from the marriage of a great melody with a great lyric.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
For you, do you then kind of see everything in the world as whether or not it's a song? Like, do you do something or see something or hear something and think, ooh, this is a good song, or
yeah,
you know what
absolutely. I mean? Art imitating life. As an example, I don't know who out there is a fan of the show Yellowstone with Kevin Costner. It's very, very big right now. as soon as
Everybody.
I listened very specifically, and I wonder if you guys did too, how music interplays in the show. They're using a lot of music by a guy named Ryan Bingham, and he actually is a character in the show too. He's got a black beard. And Taylor Sheridan, the guy who created it, said that he liked his music and wanted to put it in the show. And then he said, let's just give you a role in this and see how you do. If you suck, we'll write you out, you know? And it's amazing that the show has a very specific musicality to it. So when you ask me how I hear things, I listened to Yellowstone and I started writing 4 different pieces of music based on Yellowstone.
Based on
One of them was
the
a song
concept
called-
of it or the sound, the melody you hear?
Both. So,
Okay.
for instance, they talk about how the landscape in Yellowstone is like its own character in the show, because it is. It's gorgeous. So I wrote a song called Montana Sky. This monolith, this gorgeous western sunset that is like, it's bigger than life. You know, if you've ever been there, which I haven't, I'm imagining it only through photos. So I wrote a song called that. Then I wrote a song called Another Bullet in My Head. And the reason why I wrote a song like that is because Kevin Costner, if you notice, is someone who keeps getting, it's like Rip, sorry. When they keep getting pushed down, it's like, you think you're killing me, but that's just another bullet in my head. I'm going to keep going. You can't kill me. We're the Duttons.
You're just making me mad.
Exactly. So that was the second song I wrote. I had a previously existing song called Raised Her Right, which was kind of my ode to Southern women. It doesn't always have to be Southern, but a woman who's raised properly by her parents. That, you know, they say, well, it's a testament to your parents because you guys raised her right. You know,
Sure.
that was my, so that was in there. And then there's another one I wrote that I'm kind of still in the process of called Living for Me. And the whole kind of theme of that is, I'm not living for you. I'm not living for your processes, for your world. I'm living to preserve myself, which is exactly what Costner is doing. The Dutton family is trying to preserve their way of life in an area of, you know, of government, trying to, you know, people trying to come in and develop the area. He's having to deal with the Native Americans. So, yes, thematically, as I thought about that show, there was kind of a sonic signal that comes on in my brain. I'm like, I would like to write something like that, in that vein.
Yeah.
So, and that's just one example of how inspiration strikes me. It may be something that happens to you at the supermarket. You know.
Yeah. I'm going to circle back eventually because with the pandemic, so many people have binge watched, different series, including obviously Yellowstone, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But before I get to that, what then is the process? Let's say you put it together. You've got the lyrics, you've got the melody, and now you have to produce it. How do you?
got to cut a demo. You got to.
Yeah.
cut
Okay.
Which again, and I don't mean to use any songwriter lingo, because when they say cut, it's like, oh, he's trying. No, it's just this is what they say. You would lay down basically a basic version of the song, and it would probably be with one instrument and your voice. It'd either be a guitar, it could be a piano, usually, and that's how songwriters will lay down a demo. At that point, you would use that demo as a template to create a fuller version of the song. My opinion is that you can make some great sounding music without having to go into a studio, although here's the problem. This is what I want to circle back to. Precision of production, I think, unfortunately, has overtaken quality of song. Especially in Nashville, they want to make records so precise, and they're not even using analog equipment. They're using digitized equipment to do it. And most people's ears can't discern that. But they want to make it so perfect. They're using Melodyne, used to be called Auto-Tune. It's a different program, to tune your voice to be perfect.
Sure.
And as you probably know, Taylor Swift is re-recording her entire catalog to try to get the masters back from Scooter Braun and from Scott Borchetta, who retained the rights to her masters to her songs. She's doing it because she wants to own the songs, which I can understand why. It's very lucrative to do that. Yeah. But you have to go back in and re-record all this material. So it starts with an idea. It's like your baby. And then the baby grows, and it turns into an infant, and then it becomes a full adult by going into the production process. And there's mixing, which is its own art. Yeah. There's mastering, which is its own art. By the time it gets to you, and our the way we process music is so much more technologically great than it was 10, 15 years ago. But go back and listen to some of the old stuff by the Stones.
Oh, for sure.
As imperfect as it was, it's perfect.
Some things are over-processed. Food and music can be over-processed.
But Dennis, that's where you lose the soul of a piece.
Absolutely.
When I hear, I'm a Memphian, so when I think of Otis Redding and Al Green and people who let's use These Arms of Mine by Otis Redding. When you can hear him inhale before he starts his phrase, that's beautiful.
That's part of the whole presentation.
They would silence that.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I agree 100%. Yeah, 100% agree. Sometimes, you know, the raspiness, the breathing, whatever it is, the grunts, it gives you the grit that the song needs and deserves. So I'm with you on that. So
Another great one someone pointed me to, by the way, "Send in the Clowns" by Frank Sinatra. If you want to hear a
oh yeah.
And phrasing, by the way, is so critical. Here's my fear: we have jettisoned great performances for precision, accuracy, and fixing things. And I just want to hear the performance. Most of the time, by the way, what you hear is what's a composite of 18, 15 different vocal takes.
Sure.
Sinatra can do it in one.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So okay, now you've gone through the production. What about distribution? I think this is obviously one of the key elements. Make sure you're getting it heard and getting hopefully monetizing in some fashion. So
and now we come to the question of why you don't know me that well.
That's what I'm getting to exactly.
Yeah. So when it comes to marketing distribution, you better have some. Usually, it's in the hands of the very few. It's the diplomats at the top, so to speak, that are able to. They are gatekeepers. They want to determine what you listen to, how you listen to it, how often you listen to it. And there's obviously a lot of marketing plans and research that goes into this. But you usually have to have a record label distribute your product because, in years past at least, radio has been very important. In country music, it still is very important, actually. And pop music maybe less so. Once the era of the music video kind of went out, which it kind of is, I think, we process everything on this now.
Sure.
This is how we process things. And imagine spending $5-6 million on a music video that you watch on this.
By the way, for those people who are listening and not seeing the video,
he's holding up a cell phone.
Yeah, he's holding up the cell phone. I have to do that in depositions too because we're taking a transcript and somebody will say this or that and point, and then we have to go back and say, no, let's describe that.
Thank you for reminding me for that. But for distribution, you have to have a plan in place, and usually it's done by a label who is invested in you, and they're going to recoup all that money somewhere down the road. You won't see a penny of it until they recoup however much they've invested. So you would need to be able to get your music out to people so that they can hear it. Now, you could say, well, Bo, there's a million different distribution channels now. It's easier than ever to produce a song and put it on the internet. You're right. And you can hope for viral success, which did happen with someone like Rebecca Black with that song Friday, Friday, everyone getting down on Friday, if you remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or you come from a vehicle that's pre-existing, that's already in place. And I can't remember the name of the girl right now that's become so popular, but she came from Disney. So many artists came from the Mickey Mouse Club. Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. Right. You have a vehicle place, and Disney's actually very good at that. So if you're going to come out of the blue, out of left field, you have to hope for viral success, and no one can explain to you how those things happen. They can just say, well, I put it out there and a label believed in me and they put it out there and then it worked. It's not quite as formulaic as it used to be because there's different methods of distribution now. But I'm telling you, you can't explain why some things take off and some things don't.
Well, whose job is that for you? Is that your management team? Is that your agent? Who is it that's supposed to be getting you those labels or getting the distribution through whatever source?
It should be all three, but because I've never been signed by a major label, I've never had the shot. So when we ask this perennial question, why don't we know who you are? I guarantee you my music would be so many more places if a label had just bought in. Now, that doesn't mean that they listened to it and they didn't like it, or that it may not have been right for them at the time. I listened to so many stories, and I'm sure you've seen them too, of people who passed on every major artist that there ever was.
Right.
They turned them down. Richard Marx, it happened to him. I think John Mayer, it happened to him. There were so many. You give it. You would think that it'd be so obvious that these guys are talented, and they don't sign them. So I don't take it that personally because I know, look how many other people that are better than got overlooked. So it's the job of the label to do that, to get you that distribution. But you have to have the label really to do it. Now, the Taylor Swift method was interesting because she had a father who invested partly in the label. And by doing that, there's something called payola, which is apparently not supposed to be done anymore. It's supposed to be illegal, where you would pay the
pay to play.
Pay to play, so you would play because there's such a little window, Dennis, of opportunity for new artists because they want to hear Rascal Flatts and Keith Urban and Carrie Underwood, and they don't want to hear someone new. So the opportunity you have to slip in that window is very small. So they say, well, how about this? If you play X artist X amount of times this week, we will give you front row seats and front row access to Reba McEntire's show in Las Vegas.
Sure. Yeah.
There's your quid pro quo, right? So that's kind of how it's done. If you don't have that access, you don't get on.
Right.
That's why I come back to it's not a meritocracy. It doesn't matter how great your music is. And by the way, I can't tell you how many emails I've sent where radio broadcasters will say, I love your music, Bo. I think it's outstanding, but I can't do anything with it. And you say, why? And they don't tell you why. And then you have to research why. They're not honest enough to tell you why they can't put it on. Because Clear Channel and a lot of the iHeartRadio and a lot of the big behemoths are controlling the playlist.
Sure.
So in order to be able to get just a window of opportunity in there, you have to be supported by a label because they want to know, oh, well, this guy's not just a one-hit wonder. He's going to have 2 albums behind it. He's doing a tour. He can come into the studio and do a one-on-one with us. If they don't see that, it's like, well, if they're not buying in, I shouldn't buy in.
Well, hopefully you'll be one of those guys that people can tell that story about. Yeah, it took him forever to get the label and get the distribution and to get the following. And can you believe that? Just like you mentioned
Honestly,
with John Mayer.
Television and film have been my radio. And when I say
Sure.
that, when I did Blessed and the Ultimate Legacy for Hallmark, I couldn't believe how many people approached me and found me as a result of that performance. It's a 2.5-minute long, it's not even the full song, of me performing the song in a 2-hour-long movie on Hallmark. Now,
Right.
I'm sure a lot of the people listening to your show probably watch Hallmark. It's a binge thing for a lot of people, especially in tough times.
Especially during Christmas.
And you're thinking, out of that many movies, how could that many people have found that 2.5-minute slice of that one movie? It's not even, it's a pivotal part in the movie, but it's not the focal point of the movie, And people found me and they asked me to license the song, to perform the song in their own hometowns. I was in D.C. and someone came up to me and said, hey, are you Bo? I said, yeah. He said, you gave me the sheet music to your song, which we performed in Seattle. And I'd forgotten I'd done it. I just said, yeah, if you want it, go ahead and perform it. I was honored that they did it. So it goes to show you that in terms of visibility, never discount what television and film can do. Mm-hmm. And when you look at Netflix and Hulu and all the major distribution outlets now, music is a prized asset. And I go back to Yellowstone. It's made Ryan Bingham probably a household name as a result of that show.
Sure, and that brings up another point. And by the way, Dana, chime in anytime. I don't want to monopolize this, but obviously, since Bo and I know each other, I have some sense of the areas to discuss and focus the conversation on. But speaking of television and film, you obviously have also a successful acting career. What do you prefer doing? Do you prefer performing, singing, or do you prefer acting, or what's the buzz you get from both?
It's a great question. I've been asked it before, and it's a tough one because I love both equally. Now, that's going to sound like my lawyer.
Your 2 kids, right?
Question. I know you want to push probably harder.
Yeah, well, it's like a parent saying, "I love my kids equally." I kind of understand that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly. They're different processes, and here's how I can explain it. With music, when you write a piece of music and you perform it, it is unlike anything else to see an audience respond to it. That's why we do it. The same is true of a performance on film and television, although you don't get to see the audience's reaction to it unless you're doing live theater, which is why so many actors love doing live theater, because they want to see the response in real time. In film, you do it 15, 20 different ways, and then you don't see it till a year later, But when you're in it, and this is like, I think it's true. How can I explain this, Dennis? It'd be like if you knew that when you were, when you were an attorney in a trial, and you knew you were in a zone and you had the guy right where you wanted him, you have this moment of clarity where nothing can stop you. I think that's true as athletes, probably Tiger Woods back in his prime when he was taking every swing. There's just a certain zone that you get into. Athletes describe it, of course, and it gives you a rush like no other. I'm not someone who participates in recreational drugs, but I imagine the feeling I get when I'm doing some of these things is the closest thing to euphoria that there is. There's nothing like it, and you want to go back to that dopamine hit every single time that you're in it. So musically speaking, it may be in a 3.5-minute long song, or it could be an aria, or it could be a whole opera or a whole performance. In film and television and in acting, it's like when you're in it, you don't want to leave it because you have encapsulated that character. You are that character, and you don't want to leave it because it feels so good to just channel energy is the best way I can describe. I hope I'm translating this properly. But when you say which one do you like more, they're both similar in the energy you feel when you're doing them.
I get that, and you mentioned opera, which when I first learned that you studied opera, it was after I'd known you for some time, and I was like, "What?" Because I at that point had never heard you perform opera. I have now heard you perform. In fact, I if I remember correctly, you performed opera, at least a brief performance. With the Daily Blast, didn't you? Or
Yeah, I did. I went and did Opera Colorado, which was in Denver. They had a production of La Traviata. And
That's
so
right.
They sent me to test out my skills with their tenor, and I had to dust off the cobwebs to sing with them. And you were singing the Brindisi, which is one of the famous songs. It's the drinking song from the opera, and I had to really study to do it because I thought the vast majority of people watching it aren't going to know what goes into it, but because opera singers make it look easy, it's not easy at all to hit those notes. The technique that goes into it, and they make it look easy, just like an athlete makes a touchdown pass look easy. And I just think, it's very, very hard to do. And I did have to do a segment for that, but I have been in a couple of opera productions. One was in Opera Memphis here. I was cast for one in Nashville, but I ended up getting a television. I ended up doing the singing to be on CMT, so I couldn't actually do the opera. But it's something that, I love doing. I think if you can do that, it says something about the level of commitment and training that you're
well, yeah. If you can do that, you could probably handle just about anything vocally, and it would seem. Speaking of vocally, you've mentioned now Frank Sinatra. You mentioned Billy Joel. Who are your musical influences? I mean, are those two people?
They're big, and it's because I saw Billy Joel as a kid. My mom, it's so funny story. She had to drag me to go. I didn't want to go. Now, why I didn't want to go? Maybe because I didn't know his music. And I went, and it changed my life. The first several concerts I saw were Billy Joel, Rod Stewart, and Garth Brooks. Those are three incredible performers.
For sure.
Changed my life in so many ways. I'd be lying and probably a blasphemous person if I didn't mention Elvis Presley.
Elvis, Memphis, exactly.
I was born after he died, but it doesn't mean I don't have appreciation for his music. And if you go back and you watch...
Wait a second. Before you go further, did you just say Elvis died? You're from Memphis. Elvis lives.
I thought the conspiracy theories
okay. I'll move on.
We'll head on for that one.
Yeah.
By the way, my aunt still thinks he's alive, so whoever thinks that is not alone.
Yeah.
But if you go back and watch the '68 comeback special.
Oh yeah.
His energy, his charisma, his gift of singing and knowing vocally what to do at the right. It may have been instinctive, he borrowed, of course, a lot of some of his motions from the African American Gospel Church, which he would flip off to go watch here in Memphis. And he, why? Because it made him feel something. I think that's what we all want to do, is we want to feel something when we perform. And when we experience music, you want to feel something hit you. It's either got to make you tap your feet, dance, and I think about his unassuming way he found himself in Sun Studio and Sam Phillips discovering him, in 55 or whatever it was. And then I look at the time he went off and he served, and then he came back, and that 68 comeback special to me is so just telling of his career and just indicative. And so he's a big influence. Billy Joel, Elton John, trying to think of some of the others. Luciano Pavarotti. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, just because of his sheer technical prowess and what he's able to do. More modern guys, I'd say Bublé is certainly excellent. Josh Groban is certainly excellent at what he does. To an unassuming mastery, Ariana Grande has a voice that's obscene. How great! It's technically unbelievable what she can do.
Yeah,
her voice.
for sure.
You know what I mean? Carrie Underwood's got pipes, no question about it. I love listening to her sing. She's very, very gifted. So, I try to take bits and pieces of people from all different walks to apply to my own craft and try to learn from them. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Learn from the best.
Yeah, for sure. And so what about actors? Do you have people that you look to that influence you as far as that?
I do, for sure. I think you might remember the film, I guess it was last year, before Joaquin performances of the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Something to behold. And it's
unreal.
It's dark. It's upsetting, it's unsettling, but his mastery of what he did, especially, was incredible. I found that really, really, really compelling. And I'm just trying to think. Like Darren Aronofsky, of course, as a director, is so interesting. I love watching his films. I like Quentin Tarantino's films a lot too.
Absolutely.
What was the King's Speech is a great movie that I really, really enjoyed. And I'm trying to think of the other one. What's the one where the guy plays Darkest Hour, playing Winston Churchill? Gary Oldman.
Oh yeah.
Exceptional.
Amazing.
Daniel
For sure.
Day-Lewis has anything he touches. It's just like, can he do any wrong? I mean, the guy's
Right.
so those are guys I watch very, very closely.
Yeah, love those. Dana, you had sent me a list of questions that that I thought were pretty interesting. And even though I have those questions, I think it's appropriate for you to ask them. Do you
Okay.
still have that list? I want
I
you
think
to.
so.
I want Bo to share some of his
My
thoughts on
weirdness?
these things.
Okay,
Yes,
so,
exactly.
well, first of all,
I have to endure this, by the way, all day. So I figure you can deal with it for a little bit, Bo.
You get to. I had a
Ready to
lot
mix it
of
up.
questions as you talked, but I didn't want to interrupt you, and I know that we can't sit here all day. Otherwise, I would have asked more. So, what's something people don't know about you?
Something people don't know about me. Well, a lot of people don't know I'm an only child, which some people say, well, that figures, you know,
There we go.
when they say that. But you know what? Being an only child, I'll tell you what, it shaped me. Just like it shapes people with brothers and sisters, it shapes you in the same way. It's made me very, very independent.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, Dana, that the way I apply myself in this business and my sort of go-getter, no as an answer is going to just be off your back like, you know, water off duck's back.
Sure.
I think that's part of my only child, both blessing and curse, is that I'm able to apply myself and not worry about the rest because I'm in kind of self-preservation mode, which means that I will go after whatever I want to and won't take no for an answer. Or if it is a no, maybe it's a no right now, not no, you know, a year down the road. So that has shaped me for sure. Something people don't know about me, I'm trying to think of anything else that would be applicable here. I am a man of faith. I do believe that I've been given gifts from above. I'd be, you know, silly if I didn't say that.
Sure.
No, and a lot of people do know that about me. I mean, when you write a song like Blessed, people kind of figure it out. But,
Right.
you know, spirituality has become such a big part of why people do what they do that I'd be remiss if I didn't say that.
Yeah. Nice. So, what do you?
And I've escaped death a couple of times. It wasn't just this accident. They thought as a kid, you may remember in the early 80s, especially when I was born, that SIDS,
Yeah.
sudden infant death syndrome, was a big deal.
Of
They
course.
thought I had it because I would just stop breathing and turn blue. So if I've escaped death a couple of different times.
Wow. I bet that was
And
terrifying.
you
for
are
your
truly
parents.
blessed.
I am. And sometimes I still turn blue, Dennis.
just out of sheer who knows what. I don't. Anyway,
only when you say something off color, which is
yeah, right.
Okay, so what do you miss most about being 5 years old?
Oh gosh, what do I miss about being 5 years old? I miss the innocence.
Yeah.
I miss the lack of troubles that we as adults have to face every day. We are in an unprecedented time. Now,
Yeah.
unprecedented for us, not for people who lived during the bubonic plague, of course.
That's right.
Right, naturally.
You know, but unprecedented for us in our comfortable houses with our heat. And
Yeah.
people are freaking out in Texas, you know, because
sure.
they have, you know, electricity for a couple days. And yeah, that's bad. I'm not minimizing that, but people live with electricity and heat for God knows how long.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I miss the innocence. I miss the wonderment. You know, I wrote this song, taking back to music a little bit, called "A Kid Again," and I wrote it specifically kind of with a Hallmark kind of theme in mind. And it was about Christmas and wanting to experience Christmas the way a kid experiences it, which is this wonderment and joy in your eyes that nothing else matters other than that feeling you had Christmas Eve, like, what's Santa going to bring me? You
Yeah,
know,
that's
just
awesome.
that you see the joy in children's eyes. And when you look at a child now and see that wonderment, you realize you have no idea the weight of the world that's going to fall on your shoulders.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
no idea. And that's what I miss, is that innocence and that sort of just explore. You know, again, the whole dance like no one's watching, sing
Yeah.
like no one's listening. That's what I miss.
Yeah. I feel like I could talk about this for hours, but we can't.
We probably could.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite motivational quote?
Ooh, favorite motivational quote. I don't know who said it, but the one that's sticking out to me right now is try again, fail again, fail better.
Nice.
I love the fact that you're going to fail and you just got to keep failing better.
Yeah.
You know, I really like that one. I also like, there's a book by, it's called The Slight Edge. Jeff Olson, I believe, is the author of it, who said, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. As we talk about, Dennis, you talk about being household name and why aren't you bigger than you are, which is a question I get often. It depends in part on how you measure success. And if success to you means money and fame and riches and women and all that stuff, which are great things, certainly, but they're not going to make you happy. If you track success based on the progressive realization of something worthy, something you're aiming towards. I listen to a lot of work by Jordan Peterson, the professor from Toronto, who's talking about aim at something in life. Always be aiming. Because if you're not aiming, you're going to be aimlessly wondering.
Right.
And so I believe that whatever I do, whether it's perfecting my craft and getting better as an actor, getting better as a musician, you aim up. You know, there's always something to aspire to.
Yeah.
And so that quote really stuck out to me, that success is not about a monetary or physical gain. It's about getting somewhere.
Sure. Yeah. Love that. Love that. I have one final question, and it's actually probably the most important question you're going to be asked during this podcast.
Okay.
Why does Snoop Dogg carry an umbrella?
Why does Snoop Dogg carry an umbrella? Is this a trick question?
No.
It's a joke.
It's a joke.
There's well, I'm too dumb to figure it out right now.
Faux drizzle.
What is it?
He carries an umbrella, faux drizzle.
For drizzle, of
Faux
course.
drizzle.
I was going to make a reference to substance and why the rain might affect it, but really, we can talk about that.
You know, as I said, we have to endure this every day,
get
all
to.
day. We get to.
I'm
That's
just
right.
thinking, you know, fires lighting, fire, and how the rain might affect it. So of course he would bring an umbrella.
Of course.
You know, I know we're going to have to wrap this up in a bit, but there are a couple things that I wanted to investigate a little bit more, explore a little bit further. What would you say are maybe your top, the most meaningful words in your vocabulary? What means the most to you?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. The words I admire the most are the words I use in my lexicon most often.
However you want to interpret that question is fine.
Excellence, character, precision, aim, blessed, faith, being a beacon to other people, being a light, having again, I know I'm not going into words now, I'm just going to kind of jump around, but having a life worthy of being emulated, legacy. You know, I was in a movie called The Ultimate Legacy. What is your legacy? That defines you. And I hate to say this, but in looking at my father's headstone, which we are still trying to get because supplies are so low.
Sure.
And is, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase that the dash that is between your birth year and the year you die is what matters. It's not the year you were born and not the year you died. It's that dash. What happens in that dash?
Yeah.
There's so much. You know, the dash on a headstone is like this big, and that's your life. So to me, the dash, and the why. The why. What's your why? You know, why do you do what you do?
What about integrity?
Absolutely.
That's always struck me with you is someone who has integrity, true to your feelings, true to your core. Whether people like it or don't like it, you put it out there. And no, I've always admired that. I respect that.
Authenticity. Authenticity is another word that really sticks out to me because I think that we're living in a time where people don't know what's true and what's false, and they want to make decisions for them and for their family. You know, this vaccine, where we're headed from here, what that means, you know, whether you should get it, whether you shouldn't get it, who to protect. You know, we're kind of in a very reflective time, I think. And so authenticity is important because in our relationships and our friendships, we want, at least I do, I want authentic people. I don't want to be BS'd.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be BS'd, you know. And we live in an age of artifice, I think, where people will, look, with social media, it can be good. And I think it might have started out as a good thing. But let's be honest, what we see and what we broadcast to other people is really our highlight reel.
Sure.
It's not, you don't want to show people what's wrong with you or what's bad about you. And that's why I took a time off, by the way, guys, and came back to it after the accident, because I thought, if I'm going to use this as a vehicle, I want to use it for good. And if I can show what I came through and how I was able to surmount this mountain and what I was able to do in picking up the pieces, maybe that'll be important to someone else. So I think we have to treat what we do and put out there very gingerly. Because we're living in an era where you flip on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, you're seeing that person's reel.
Yeah.
Their REEL, their highlight reel, not their real life.
Yeah.
Right.
And that makes us jealous. It has a psychological effect upon us. I think about, I mean, you guys probably have experienced just the quarantine and the lockdown itself, what that did mentally to so many of us.
For sure.
And you want to find authenticity. So that's a big one for me, Dennis.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I guess first of all, we could do this all day, I know. So we'll have to have you back so we can explore some other things. But the last thing I would like to explore with you is what's in store. What are you looking forward to this year? What, professionally and personally, I guess.
I think back to, and I'm trying to remember the year. It might have been 2008 or so. There was a show that I had conceptualized, and I think I called it the Bo Show or something like that, just to have a nice little rhyme to it, nice little cadence. And I had pitched it to, at the time, Oprah Winfrey had created what is now the Oprah Winfrey Network, OWN. And they were looking for people that wanted to create their own shows, and you could make it like a traditional talk show. It could be a hybrid show. It could be like Dr. Phil, self-help, cooking, whatever. And I was trying to create this kind of multi-pronged, little bit of this, little bit of that, little bit of music, let music guide it, and I went out to LA. They flew me. I made it to the top 20. And I remember getting there, Dennis, and I have to tell this story because it was in front of Mark Burnett and his team at the time. And I noticed that everybody around me was quite different, but I didn't know what their concepts were for their shows because they isolated us. They have to do that. And so you're in a hotel room and you have no idea what anybody else's show is. And I remember I went in there and in front of 3 producers and I pitched my show, and they took my notes away from me. They said, "You don't need these." I said, "Well, of course I need them. I'm planning a show. I kind of want to tell you what my pilot episode is." And I think I had Kings of Leon in it, and I was all these things going on. I had my first show planned out, and they said, "Yeah, what would Jesus think about you being in Cosmopolitan magazine?" I was like, "That's the question they asked me? That's the best you can do?" I said, "I think he'd be okay because I wasn't nude." And they said, "Oh, okay. So, and what would make you interesting, since you're from the South, to anybody outside of the South?" I said, "Well, I think it's worked pretty well for Matthew McConaughey, Brad Pitt, Kristen Chenoweth." I went through a whole list of people that were Renee Zellweger. I said they're all doing pretty well. They were trying to stump me and they couldn't do it. And then they sent me home the next day, and I said, "What happened? What was the problem?" And they said, "Oh, I don't know, just BS casting, So I fly home and I'm wondering, why did this not, what was the problem? And I think they were trying to create a reality show around the creation of this show that they wanted to try to get people to fall for their gas, and I wouldn't do it. So roundabout way, here we are in 2021. I still want to do that show, and I'm actually negotiating, hopefully, cross my fingers, the opportunity to create my own show where I can do it like I want it, to have musical elements, to talk about artistry, to talk about philanthropy and human interest. We've got to have that heartbeat in our world, in our country right now. We're living in divided times. How do you have that conversation with someone you disagree with? We've experienced this big time in 2020 where the divide has gotten bigger and bigger. And I really wish that we'd return to the sense of being Americans rather than Republicans and Democrats or libertarians or whatever we are. And find, Matthew McConaughey is actually doing a pretty good job of this right now. He's got a podcast where he's discussing some of these things. And we've really let the division split between us. So I'd like to cover a lot of different topics, very similar to what we're talking about today. Yeah. And so cross my fingers within the next couple months that'll happen.
That's funny because I was going to say, even if you don't do a show like that, at least not one on television, you should certainly be doing a podcast, whether it's the Bo Show or whatever. Yeah. But no, I want to thank you so much, Bo, for being on with us. Hopefully, more people will know Bo at the end of 2021. And for the audience, I want to thank you all for joining us. If you'd like to catch the video of this podcast, you can do so by going to vlaw.com. And certainly we hope that you will be back next week when we have another exciting guest. Thank you all. Love you all. Stay safe.